I want to welcome folks back to our Zoom interviews. We've changed our format. We went a year doing one a week, and it was getting harder and harder to line up guests, so we're doing one a month now. And in August, we actually used an interview with a friend of Margaret Chase Smith, who had recently passed away, Captain Georgia McCurley. But we're back to doing live interviews, and our guest today is Sarah McLaren Florencia. Good afternoon, Sarah.
Hi, David. It's nice to talk to you.
How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
So tell people where you're coming to us from.
Yeah, so I currently reside in Burlington, Vermont. I've lived in Vermont with my family for 5 years now.
Very nice. And let people know what your connection to the Margaret Chase Smith Library is.
So back in 2011, no, 2001, was it 2001, David?
2001, yeah.
Yeah, time flies, huh? I was a fellowship student with Northwood University.
Okay. And Northwood University used to run the Margaret Chase Smith Library from 1982 to 2011. It was a school based in Midland, Michigan. And they would send students out for a semester to do research at the library. It was up to 6 students would come every semester, and usually in the fall, although sometimes they did it in the spring. You came in the fall of 2001. Why did you want to be a Northwood University Margaret Chase Smith Fellowship student back in 2001?
That's such an interesting question that I wish I could go back and ask my 20-something-year-old self.
Mm-hmm.
I think, honestly, when I went to university, I was from a small town in Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
I came from very much a blue collar family and didn't have a lot of direction, to be quite honest, and was kind of feeling my way through life and trying to gain as many experiences as I could.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, and this isn't a slant to anyone that lives in my hometown, but I was honestly scared of having to return back to my hometown. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't because it's a bad place to live, but it was just more, I saw the potential of all the places I could go. And mm-hmm. I felt the need to want to make it. And so I was a pretty serious student. I like to have a good time, but I didn't want to F up my life, for lack of a better term. And for me, I was constantly looking for strong female leadership because it's not something you see very often in the world. Even in 2021, even with more female leaders, there's more skepticism around female leaders. People are concerned about if a female leader in particular, takes a strong stance, they're perceived differently than what male counterparts are. And I think for me, it was really, how do I identify myself with other leaders, whether it be in my discipline or not in my discipline, that have made it in the world and have made an impact? Because at that point, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I was just like, the world's my oyster. I'm going to try for everything I can. I wasn't very politically charged, but it was more just about how could I capture different life experiences to really shape myself and grow as an individual. So I applied. Mm-hmm. I was endorsed by the faculty at Northwood, which I'm very grateful for. And I was one of the 6 fellowship students. So it was a great privilege.
Very well said. I'm impressed. What was your major at Northwood?
Yeah, so I think it was a triple major: international business, marketing, and management.
Okay.
And then I went on to do my MBA at Northwood as well.
Okay. Had you, at that point, coming from a small town in Michigan, had you ever been to Maine before?
I might have been as a child. Details get fuzzy the older you get, David. I think I had been as a child. My family always, we didn't do international travel. My parents did very much believe in domestic travel. And, we never flew anywhere. We always drove. It was the great McLaren adventure, I would say. And I do think we spent time out east because I can remember going as a child to Vermont. Okay. And my mom having a house that she really loved. And my parents were into lapidary work, which is like the study of rocks and minerals. And we would go on rock hunting trips.
Okay.
And so I'm almost positive that I had been to Maine at a younger time, but I don't remember the details. Again, fuzzy as you get older.
Yeah, there are actually some good rock hounding places in Maine. So if they had an interest in rocks, there might have been some places in Maine they went to.
Yeah.
So as you're in your early 20s, getting ready to come to Maine, what were your expectations? Did you have any trepidations about venturing to Maine?
Well, I had never lived out of state at that point. So that was the big trepidation, I would say, because, I very much wanted to go to college out of state, but my parents nixed that right away. And that's how I ended up being in state at a private college. And I think that was probably good for me developmentally because I had only ever lived in one home in one area. And I was ready though. I was ready to spread my wings and to live out on my own. It was my first time living on my own without roommates or anything because we each had our own, I guess we could call it a suite at the town motel. And so that probably was the scariest thing. But I think my personal belief is it is what you make of it, right? And try to be outgoing and just recognize that everyone was in the same situation. We didn't know each other. So really tried to embrace it with some eagerness. And I don't know if you remember, I was a big into moose. I had this fixation on moose and I wanted to go moose hunting, but not shoot a moose. I wanted to just see a moose in the wild and stuff. So, I was pretty fixated on that and asking everyone where I could go see moose. And I made some friends along the way that would go moose hunting with me.
Did you wind up seeing moose in Maine?
Yeah, remember, you probably don't remember because again, details are fuzzy, but for me, who was on wanting to see moose, you took us to a wildlife preserve.
Oh, okay.
Which was just, that's not it, David.
Okay.
So it was the last week and a bull moose walked into town and got trapped in an open lot downtown, and we went down and saw it.
Okay. Did you wind up seeing one at the animal park?
We did. I think it was an albino one.
Okay. Yeah, there was usually, if it's at the animal park, the Inland Fisheries and Wildlife runs that. And it's usually there's something wrong with it. It's ill, it's hurt, so it can't be out in the wild.
It wasn't the optimal experience to see a moose, but you tried really hard.
I feel safe to guarantee that students would see a moose. Take them to see one in captivity.
The irony of it all is I saw the trapped moose downtown in Skowhegan, but later on in my life, we actually went to Alaska on a cruise with my parents and we saw a moose on the side of the road. So that felt like a real meaningful moose encounter. That was safe.
Are there any moose in Michigan and the UP or? Yep.
Yeah, I think they're probably in the UP, but you don't see them. And you also hear stories in Vermont, but the numbers aren't great enough. And frankly, I'm probably not out at the right times to be seeing a moose.
There probably aren't many in the Burlington area.
No, but out in the mountains, we haven't seen them in the East yet.
All right. So you paid us a visit this summer, and we'll get to that towards the end of our discussion. And it was my realization, this is your 20th reunion. From graduation from the Margaret Chase Smith Fellowship Program. What are your memories? What are your recollections of the fellowship program?
I just remember how kind everyone was, yourself and Angie and Lynn and David, or
Byron?
Dr. Gallant and Byron. Yeah. And everyone was just so nice. I also think I didn't know anything about Margaret Chase Smith, nothing. She has a really strong New England presence, but I think often women in history get lost a little bit because they're few and far between. So you don't hear the great stories, and just being able to dig into her personal archives, just was awesome, right? And to see how she was able to make an impact and how she was well regarded by other politicians and other people and other males and was respected in a time when females weren't heard of being in those type of positions as well, and really carved the way and kind of a humble approach to it. I also think given that it is our 20th anniversary, it is also the 20th anniversary of 9/11. We were at the library when that happened. And I remember being gathered around Senator Smith's television, her old black and white television. And we were watching it together, and just like a really moving moment. I think the program also afforded me the opportunity to really understand the culture of Maine and the history of Maine, and to understand the industry of Maine, and to understand how Maine people live and they thrive, and they're very proud of the state that they're in. And honestly, it's a beautiful state. And we just came back, and like, as you know, I like to come back to Maine. It's few and far between, but it's always on my list of like places that I really love and fantasize about living someplace someday there.
Okay, so I'm going to transition to the share screen and show some photographs to.
Just so all the viewers know, I did not pre-screen these photographs, and I will probably be mortified in some of them, but I'm going to let David do it.
Does this one mortify you?
No, this one's okay.
So there are two components. There is an academic component, and you mentioned Dr. Gallant. So he would teach you a course, and he had you read some books. Do you remember any of the books or any of the topics that you covered with Dr. Gallant?
David, no.
Well, I never took the class, so I'm not even sure. I mean, I have a vague idea of some of the.
I like, as much as I would say I was a serious student, I think my retention's pretty low on some of these things.
Okay.
I know that, like, because it was part of Northwood's curriculum, we had some time around the Northwood idea, as well as the Margaret Chase Smith book that's read. Do you know which book I'm talking about? I don't know what it's called.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't remember the courses, David. Oh, here you go. They're in my basement. The books are in my basement. That's it.
This isn't going to work because I'm doing share screen, so I'm going to stop share for a moment. Was this is probably the book that you read about Margaret Chase Smith? Yeah.
Yes.
No Place for a Woman by Jan Sherman, who is one of the people I interviewed for this series, and you can find all the interviews on our YouTube channel, the MCS Library. All right, so we'll go back to share screen here.
Small plug there for the content, right, David?
Yes, exactly. I picked up some business acumen from being around Northwood people over all these years. So you did do a course. I think it was maybe 1 or 2 days a week that you would come together as a class and talk about books and have discussions. And then another academic assignment was you had to write 2 papers. Do you remember the papers that you wrote? I think you remembered one when you were here.
Yeah, I still just remember one, and it was very fitting for me given where I've ended up in my career. But it was Margaret's involvement with the Business Professional Women's Group.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
She was very active in what's called the BPW, the Business and Professional Women's Club, helped to start a chapter here in Skowhegan, became the editor of the statewide newsletter, and then eventually became the state president of the BPW. So those are the academic components, and then there would be a professor from Northwood who'd come out in the middle of the term to check up on you, and that's who's pictured here, Professor Tom Leptowski. Did you ever have a course with Professor Leptowski at Midland?
No, I didn't, but he was a pretty known character around campus and a very jovial.
Character's a good term for it.
Yeah, he was very jovial, and he really loved the library and everything about it. And that was very endearing to me. But yeah, he was our advisor while we were out there.
Yeah, he would drive to.
Oh, he did?
Yeah. And he'd usually come with his brother Clarence to ride shotgun. And it'd be like, then they'd do it all in one day. It would be like a 20-hour trip.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did not know that. That's intense.
He did it for many, many, many years. He did that. He did the fellowship program. In the summer, he'd bring university college students out, and he'd usually do between 2 and 4 of those in the summertime, again, driving out to Maine and obviously driving back to Michigan as well. So he racked up a lot of miles going between Midland, Michigan and Skowhegan, Maine. All right, so that's the academic component of the program. And then
Sorry that I don't have more to add there.
There's also the cultural component. And do you remember some of the field trips that you went on?
I do. The field trips were the highlight of every week because that's when you let us go around Maine and just really understand the people of Maine and really what drives the Maine economy, which was awesome.
Yeah, the history, the culture, the industry that we try to expose to that. I think every Thursday we would take a field trip, and usually we would go to like two places, like one place in the morning and one place in the afternoon. Do you remember this scene here where you were?
Is this the Moosehead Lumber?
Moose River.
Moose River
Lumber in Jackman, Maine.
Yep, I
Looks
do.
like
I
you
remember
have a lot
this
of
one.
2x4s or a stack of them.
Yeah, I actually told you a funny story. I don't know if you remember from when we were there this summer that all these years I had kept like the plastic wrapping that came off of like what covered the wood at my parents' house. It was in my closet. And I was cleaning out my stuff and I was like, Mom and Dad, why would you keep this for 20 years? I threw it out. I'm sorry to everyone that works there today. I couldn't keep it anymore. I'm sorry.
So there were 6 students all together, and there'd be 2 from the Midland, Michigan campus, 2 from the Cedar Hill, Texas campus, and 2 from the West Palm Beach, Florida campus. And so here are some of your colleagues. Lisa Webster, who I think was from Palm Beach.
Correct. But she's a Michigander. She now lives in Colorado.
Okay. And was it Fatima? Was that her name?
Yeah, that's Fatima. She was from Texas.
Oh, she was from the Cedar Hill, Texas campus. Yeah. All right. And I think this is from the same trip.
Yeah. I don't know what you want me to say about this.
Well, you're obviously striking a pose. It's actually a place called Addian Overlook. It's up on a hillside, and you look out to the north, and it's beautiful views of the lakes and the mountains.
Clearly, I wasn't a trepid adventurer. I always embrace the situation. I even have the fitting Maine tie-dye happening there.
And it even looks like you're in an area where they had recently done a cut because you see a lot of the debris still on the ground.
Oh, I do remember that. I remember us talking how the lumbering industry works all the way from the site to the plant and then milling down to the pieces.
Yeah. And this is another piece of the forest products industry. Do you remember where you are here?
This is a paper mill, right?
Yeah. It's a paper mill in the next town up the Kennebec River from Skowhegan, Madison, Maine. And interestingly, and this is something that's I've been here for 25 years, and it's been a slow process going on for the past 25 years, is that one by one, the paper mills are closing down. So this paper mill is actually closed now. It's been closed for several years. But they're trying to convert it into a plant that will create insulation from wood products. So there was just an article in the paper that they are trying to line up some funding to get, I think, a bond for like $80 to $100 million to start it up in this new venture.
Is there any push from the state of Maine to get into more sustainable products and recycling and using these facilities that way?
Well, I mean, that's the idea, is that partly what they'd be using is products of the forest product industry that might not get used otherwise.
Yeah, so post-consumer, or actually post-industrial waste and turning into new products.
Well, not even so much. I mean, there is the element of sort of recycling the things that we use, but this is more using the parts of the trees that don't get used in lumber or paper making. Okay. And if you can get the fiber from that, then there's other products you can make. And the product they want to make with the wood fiber is insulation.
Oh, that's great.
So rather than having it be fiberglass, it'll be fiber wood. And apparently it's something that's used quite extensively in Europe, but it's not used at all in the United States. So they're hoping to, this company is trying to introduce it to the United States. And they actually purchased some machinery from Germany and are in the process of getting it installed into this mill in Madison, Maine. So here's the whole group right here, all 6 of you. On one of your field trips. We always try to get you, in this area, paper making is a big business. There's a paper mill here in Skowhegan. There's one down in Winslow, Maine, and there's, or actually used to be one, that one closed. There's one in Waterville, Maine, and Jay, Maine, and Rumford, Maine. So it's quite a few paper mills still in the area. Here's a fun field trip, North Star Orchards. This is fall is apple picking time in Maine. So we gave you a chance to get some fresh apples. Any recollections about this visit?
I believe we picked apples and then we made something with Angie, right?
Oh, did you do apple pies?
I think we probably did.
Okay, I think there was a picture of that, but I didn't put that one in. Do you remember what this is?
Well, I I can observe from the photo that it's a dam, but I don't remember the dam.
Well, it's probably the largest dam in Maine. Well, at least on the Kennebec River. There might be some bigger ones on the Penobscot River, but hydropower.
Was it an electric? An electric? Yeah,
hydroelectric dam, yeah. It's called Wyman Dam. And behind that dam is a man-made lake called Wyman Lake, which is a lake that flooded out a couple of towns. And that was done, I think in like the 1920s or 1930s, so it's been around for a long time. But we'll get to another reason why the dams became important to controlling the Kennebec River right here. Oh, we seem to have lost Sarah for the moment.
You keep talking, David. I'll be right with you. I'm just putting the dog out.
Oh, okay, very good. So we'll go back to share screen here. This is actually a field trip that Sarah organized. One of the things that she wanted to do while she was here was go rafting. It was not on our schedule of things to do. We had never tried to do that with fellowship students. But she organized it. She contacted several rafting companies and found a good price. And so off we go. Pick up the story about the rafting trip, Sarah.
Oh, this is when I was young and fun and adventuresome.
You mean you're not anymore?
Kids really temper that a little bit, like
Okay.
the mortality factor. Yeah, this was really fun. So I'd never been whitewater rafting before. There's not a lot of rapids in Michigan. So once we learned that there was an opportunity in Maine, I did indeed coordinate this to go down the river. What we found is that the dam did control releases every day. And the water was freezing because it was late fall at this point. We did need adults to go with us, not that we weren't adults, but we convinced David and Dr. Gallant to go with us on this adventure. And we had a great time, didn't we, David?
We did. We all survived it.
Yeah, we didn't drown. We didn't die. There was no injuries. Like, we just had a good time.
So we just looked at a dam, Wyman Dam. And right here, it's called Harris Station. So this is another dam on the Kennebec River that's to the north of Wyman Dam. And so it's the dams that they use to control the release of water. And so by letting more water go, you get more of the rapids. And actually, there's several different releases that they do. There's like certain times of the year, like maybe 3 or 4 times a year, where they let out a lot of water. And that's really rapids. Ours was just, I think, a regular day.
Yeah, I think we did mid-tier. We weren't like wimpy kids. We did like class 3. That was a good one.
Well, we got bounced around. We had some hydraulics. Yeah.
Yeah, we got a couple good shots out of it. I don't think, did anyone, maybe Dan fell out of the boat once?
Well, yeah, I think someone did. There is a certain point. The thing with the Kennebec River, it's like for the first half hour, it's one rapid after another. And then for the rest of the time, you're just lazily floating down the river. And at that point, they encourage you to get out whenever you want. I think we did a pretty good job of all staying in the raft.
I have gone rafting I think 2 or 3 times since then
Mhm.
with less stellar experiences. I
Okay.
would say that I prefer to stay in the raft
Yeah.
versus falling
Yeah.
out. It's definitely very exhilarating. I think everyone should try it at least once, but know who your guide is and know that they're trained.
Well, we had a wonderful guide.
We had a lovely guide.
Whose name, I'll never forget his name because it's one of my favorite movies. His name was Shane, and
Yeah.
Shane is one of my favorite movies.
I'm
And
pretty
I
sure
would
he
say
was pretty
Shane did
handsome too.
90% of the work.
Yeah. He was pretty cute though too. I think I think all of us girls were swooning.
So when you left, you gave me a present. The present was a picture of us rafting.
There it is.
So,
I want all the viewers to know that David has the big.
there we are. So it would have been 8 of us, the students, and then myself, and in the back, doing again 90% of the work is the guide. All right. So again, and I give you full credit. You're the one who organized that trip.
Yeah, it was a good time. And you've gone since then too.
I have not. I've only ever been whitewater
Oh, you
rafting
only been
once,
once?
and that was with you.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
Thank you, David.
You're welcome. All right. So what else do we have here? Okay, this is a field trip down to Augusta, and we usually take people to the Maine State Museum. And then we take them over to the State House and they get to meet some important people. This is the former Attorney General, Steve Rowe. And actually a good friend of Margaret Chase Smith, who was a state legislator. So Shirley Richard, she'd be the one who would coordinate these visits.
I remember Shirley.
Shirley right here, Shirley Richard. And here you are with the governor of the state of Maine at the time, Angus King, who is now a United States Senator. And quite often the students would always be amazed the connection that we have to our politicians in Maine. They're very accessible. Being a small state, that's one of the advantages, is that you can just go and have a meeting with the governor. Okay, I think it's another fun picture. It wasn't all work and field trips and papers and classes. You got to do fun stuff too. So what's going on here, Sarah? Explain yourself.
October 31st, the best day of the year, Halloween.
Are you a big Halloween fan?
Surprisingly, I'm not. I don't know what came over me. My husband really is now. So like we do family costumes now. But at the time when I was at the library, like I never really did Halloween very well as a kid. It was always an afterthought of my parents. They'd be like, "Oh, get a sheep, be a ghost," like wasn't a big deal. So I don't know. In college, you do crazy things. And I think we just got it in our head of like, how do we have fun on Halloween in Maine? And we went to the thrift shops and we got costume materials. I will say those mittens, though, those were not from the thrift shop. And those are actually some very durable fleece mittens that I found locally that I still have to this day. And they're very toasty. They're nice mittens.
Okay. You
still have the hat too.
Okay.
I actually have the whole costume.
Okay. And it looks like they're bat cupcakes.
Oh yeah. I've been known to make a few cupcakes in my life. I do like to cook once in a while. And here's kind of my MO on the cupcakes. Honestly, my nieces and nephews, that's their happy memories of me. Is that Aunt Sarah always makes. Yeah, I used to make cupcakes. My own kids, I don't even make cupcakes for them now. I'm a career woman now, people. I don't have time to do that stuff.
So this is your class photo as time was winding down. This was taken in November of 2001. And, at that point, you head back to your campuses and have your, generally speaking, for most students, it'd be their final semester of their, did you come as seniors or juniors?
I was a junior because the following year I did term in Europe.
Okay. Yeah, I think as I recall now, I think most of the students wound up coming in their junior year.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's the last. Oh, no, that is the last photo. But before we do
yeah.
this one, so did you have a favorite field trip?
I really enjoyed going down to Owl's Head.
Okay. Did you go to the lighthouse?
We went to, no, it was foggy. It was so foggy we couldn't see in
You went
front of
to the
us. But we went to
Transportation
the
Museum?
Transportation Museum, and we did drive up the state park there.
Okay.
But it was by that time the fog had burned off a little bit, so it was a little bit better. I really liked that one. Oh, David, we did a pop-up field trip with you that was very interesting. We went to Poland Springs and the Shakers.
Okay.
That
Well, that's
was
when we
cool.
would have gone to the game park to see the moose too.
Yeah, so I think those two really stand out. Especially like the Poland Springs, like I know that's what you did your dissertation in, but like just had no idea on any of that. Again, I was naive back then. And then also yeah, it was just those two just really stand out.
Okay. So it seems like in your time here, and it's only like 10 weeks, maybe 12 at the most, somewhere between 10 and 12 weeks. So, you know, in the big scheme of your life, you're not here that long, but it seems like you were smitten by your time here and you've made efforts to come back. And so here is an effort to come back in 2010 with your boyfriend at the time.
Yeah.
And you made the visit to the Skowhegan and the library.
He looks like he fits in Maine.
Yeah,
That-
well, except for his D hat. Got to change that to a B hat. D hat. And you went on to get married.
Yeah, we
What-
just
what-
celebrated our 10th anniversary.
Okay, so it was soon after this that you got married. This is October of 2010. You got married in 2011?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, very good. And then, more recently, you were just here in August. And now with children.
Yeah, I got the kids until this time.
Yeah. What are their ages?
So Laurel, who's in this photo, is 8. She's a 3rd grader.
Mm-hmm.
And then the little one, who was very proud of herself for not touching anything at the library while we were there, is Gwendolyn, and she's 5. She just started kindergarten this fall.
Okay. And what you're doing is you're showing them some of the photographs that I've just been sharing with the audience, so they can see what Mom was doing back 20 years ago when she was a student. All right. So you graduated from Northwood in 2002?
2003. was my
2003?
undergrad. Yep.
And what did you go on to do?
I spent a year and a half in grad school immediately
Okay.
afterward.
Okay, right there in Midland, Michigan at Northwood.
Right there in Midland. And then, you know, I ended up taking a role in Chicagoland, Greater Chicagoland,
Mhm.
in brand management. I was an associate brand manager at a privately held company. Had no idea what brand management was at the time.
Mhm.
Again, like very supportive family, but didn't have business acumen or really know. And like, you know, they do a lot of things to prepare you for the real world in college, but they don't always talk about career paths. And,
Mhm.
you know, I had done some internships and stuff, and I landed in brand management because the founder's son was the VP of marketing at this company that hired me. And the rest is history. I've been doing it almost 20 years now.
Okay, for what companies or what brands would
Yeah.
people recognize?
Yeah. So the first company I was at did Peak antifreeze,
Okay,
windshield wiper blades,
yeah.
really sexy automotive aftermarket products.
Well, and that's one of the things, that's sort of one of the niches that Northwood had was in the automotive industry. OEM, right?
Sure.
Automotive equipment.
Original equipment manufacturers is OEM. And then they did aftermarket stuff, which is an extension of it. So yeah, so I did the aftermarket side of it. It was a privately held company, as I mentioned. The owner, quirky, eccentric, probably billionaire, acquired a food company called Bear Fruit. And they knew the automotive didn't really jive with who I was. I stuck it out, but they pulled me over to launch this line called Bear Fruit. So I did all the brand positioning work and the graphics changes and took it from a small company out in Washington to a national line. What we ended up doing was selling off the range though, because Old World soon realized, that was the company I was working at, soon realized they were not meant to be in the food industry. It takes a lot to incubate ideas and grow them and drive trial and repeat and awareness of your product propositions. And they just weren't in it for the long game, which was fine.
Mhm.
So I parted ways with Old World because I was not going back to automotive. Just
No
wasn't
more
gonna-
windshield wipers for you.
No, I had a lot of fun because we got to go to like IndyCar races and things of that nature. And like, I was Mr. Clean's handler, which basically is like the person who's in charge of them. There's a guy that plays. So like, I had a lot of fun, just was not for me.
So Old World had the brand of Mr. Clean?
Well, we licensed it through Procter and Gamble. So like to do wiper blades. So a lot of crazy experiences there, not all great, but really helped me identify what I wanted to be doing, and B, what I was good at, and like really see the possibility of brand management and what you could do in your career. And I think because it was a small privately held company, it was $1 billion in revenue, but only about 150 employees at the time. I had to wear a lot of hats. So I learned a ton about what it really took. So after Old World, I made the jump to Hasbro. So the toy and game industry.
Which I was interested in because Hasbro had bought Milton Bradley. And Milton Bradley, the person who started that company, was born in Central Maine. He was born in Vienna, Maine, which isn't far from Cowhegan.
Yeah.
And
yeah, so we
the game that launched his career, he developed in 1860, the Game of Life, which is still around today. And
still around today.
Different version than what his was on a checkerboard. But the origins of Milton Bradley are in Central Maine, and then he started a company in Springfield, Vermont, and Springfield, Massachusetts.
Yep.
Hasbro owns the brand now.
Correct. Yep. And so they owned it at the time. And we were at that Massachusetts location, the games division was. So we had a historical archive of all the original games from him. And so I was there. I managed brands like Connect 4, Operation, Guess Who.
And I think I remember talking to you once, and I think the project you were working on was the movie tie-ins.
Yes. Yeah, so Hasbro's initiative back, oh gosh, that was so long ago at this point, was really to take the intellectual property of some of these games and really to blow out the characters behind things like Candyland or Clue. And so I moved from the kids' core 4 games, which were the Operation Connect 4 brands, and then I moved over to manage Clue and Candyland. And if you've played those as a child, there's some very distinct archetypes or characters that are key to the role. So we were working on live action and animated type of long form movies. So we were working with production companies in LA, reading scripts in locked rooms because movie scripts are very often under lock and key and only tight audiences can see them, and working with writers. Fortunately, it was the time of the economic collapse back in 2008 that they didn't get green lighted because the movie industry tightened down, but it was fun to be a part of the development process and to really understand like how your brand standards can inform these things and shape these things, and like really what you're willing to compromise on or not compromise on. And also just like to see how far you can stretch a brand to really give it legs to go into things like apparel or different types of merchandise and things of that nature. So it was really awesome.
So that takes us to central Massachusetts, but how do you get to Burlington, Vermont?
Yeah. Well, first you have to go to Michigan.
Okay, back to Michigan.
Yeah. So I met Juan, actually, my husband, when we were in Massachusetts. He had finished his, well, I guess he didn't have his master's there. I think he already had his master's. He was working on his doctorate program at the University of Massachusetts. I was working at Hasbro. We met online. It was when online dating was pretty prevalent. At this point I was a 30 something, well, early 30 professional. So I took to online dating. I met Juan. He happened to be from Michigan. So when lightning strikes, it strikes. So we bought our first house in Massachusetts, but then we decided when we were married that we were going to move back to Michigan to start our family.
Mhm.
So we went back to Michigan to our roots. We grew up only about 2 hours away from each other.
Mhm.
So we found some place that was right for us, and I started working for Kellogg.
Okay.
So the cereal company, the cereal giant.
I've heard
I
of
was
it.
on the, yeah, you might have heard of it. So I started in the master brand. So again, building intellectual property, building like brand attributes, driving meaningfulness of the brand for consumers that had kind of fallen out. So, like worked on the global restage of their website. I worked on Olympic activation and stuff. And then I went over, because of my kid background, to manage a kid cereal portfolio. So probably know Fruit Loops. I managed that for a while.
Are you friends with Toucan Sam?
Yeah, we're buddies. I updated him to put him in a CGI, which is a type of graphic design to make him look more contemporary. Part of the briefing team on that. So did that for a few years, started our family, had 2 kids in Michigan. And then I decided that I wasn't into cereal.
Okay.
So
no more windshield wipers, no more cereal.
Yeah, no more cereal. Can't do it. And I think like for me, like life changes are pivotal moments, and having children was really eye-opening just to like how food is created, what goes into food, and like really holding yourself to a different standard. And obviously you have to buy what you can afford. And there's a lot of good merits of cereal and stuff. It just was like, I needed to do something that was really going to impact our life. And I became really interested in the green cleaning space, because what I had found out is that, most cancers and most illnesses are caused by things that are heavily prevalent in your homes. So what you clean with, what you cook with, the things of that nature. And, a lot of cleaning products have artificial fragrances or VOCs, which are volatile organic compounds that cause, they're carcinogens, they cause cancer. And so like, really thinking about environmental impact and sustainability of like, how do you change your life and change what you're doing to make for a better future for your family? And so I found this company, 7th Generation, which is a cleaning company. It's still around today, has very high, it's mission oriented, very high sustainability standards, very high like product formulations that take into account all of those negative things and take it out of their formulations and really just have the basics in there. They still do the job extremely well, but they're plant-based. And so they're not using fossil fuels. Because I think the other thing is like, I went from wellhead of petroleum in antifreeze to petroleum in cleaning products. And then you realize the connection to fossil fuels and how they're used in everything. And it's a limited resource. And it's like, what, you can do things better. So 7th Generation, their plant-based formula is powered by plants. So I went there and I managed the home care portfolio for just about 5 years. And now most recently, we were acquired by Unilever when I first started.
Okay.
Unilever is a big consumer packaged goods company. I feel like I'm giving you my resume, David.
Well, and one of the brands that people will recognize is they own Ben & Jerry's.
They own Ben & Jerry's. They
among
own
many
Hellmann's,
other brands as well.
Hellmann's mayonnaise. They own, I don't know, Tresemme, like, and now I'm managing the Suave hair care brand and working to turn that around. So yeah.
Very good. Well, you've done well for yourself. You've had a very interesting, I remember Dr. Fry, who was the president of Northwood, he had a term he liked to use, what you see your career trajectory as, and you're having a very interesting career trajectory.
Yeah, the thing about careers is that at any time you could change your career, right? You don't have to stay in a discipline. I think the interesting thing about business and why I like business is because once you have the fundamentals down, you can cross industries and segments and really, drive the projection of where that company is going to go. So it's really, I don't know, it's been good for me, but who knows, maybe I'll quit and become a doula someday, or a real estate agent, or, like the thing is I consider myself a lifelong learner. And like even in the pandemic, I picked up a new skill set. I make quilts now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So like, I don't know. I just try to glass half full, there's always something out there, and it's all about knowing your own worth and like having a mentality that you can accomplish anything. And I think that's really what Margaret did too. Like she wasn't afraid. She took names and got the job done.
Took on challenges. Yeah. Very good. Very impressive. Well, thank you for taking the time to speak with me today and talk about your time here at the library as a fellowship student, what you've gone on to do in your career, which is, again, very impressive. And I hope that you're not only a lifelong learner, but that you will continue to be a visitor to Maine. And like you say, who knows, maybe someday you'll live here in Maine.
David, you don't have to question that one. That's always going to happen. My husband even said after this last trip, he's like, I don't quite get your fixation on Maine. And I was like, I don't know. I just really like it.
Well, you know, to me, fundamentally, it's such a beautiful state.
It really is. Well, thank you for thinking of me, and thank you for being such a positive force in my development and my life. And, you know, I wish nothing but the best to you, but also to the library. And I hope that other people can continue to learn about Margaret's legacy.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.